नमस्कार। हामी सबैलाई थाहा भएको कुरो हो कि भर्खरै मात्र सिक्किमको जुन 5 दिने बजेट सत्र छ यो समाप्त भएको छ। विभिन्न बिल्सहरू प्लेस गरिएको थियो भने जनरल बजेट पास भएको छ विदाउट एनी डिस्कसन, अनि हामीले धेरै कुरोहरू अनफोल्ड भएको पनि देख्यौँ यसपालि एसेम्ब्लीमा। र एउटा ओभरभ्यू दिनका निम्ति यसपालिको बजेट के कस्तो रह्यो यसबारे जानकारी दिनका निम्ति हामीसँग अहिले द कन्सल्टिङ एडिटर अफ समिट टाइम्स मिस्टर पेमा वाङचुक हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँसँग कुराकानी गर्नेछौँ। सर, फर्स्ट एन्ड फरमोस्ट वेलकम। सो you were closely, I'm sure you were closely following the budget session जति पनि बजेटहरू पास भएको छ यो तपाईले क्लोजली फलो गर्नु हुँदै थियो। के देख्नुभयो एज अ ओभरअल तपाईले यो पालिको बजेट सेसनमा?
I guess we'll have to separate the session from the budget itself, right? I mean, there was a budget session, and in that sense, it was reminiscent of the earlier budget sessions in the absence of the opposition. Not because they were not elected, but they decided not to attend. So that kind of makes it incomplete in a way for me, because you had the ruling party MLAs asking questions, but it was more about embarrassing the previous government than getting any queries, right? So it was reminiscent really for me of '94 actually, when SDF first came into power. This was almost a replay of that session, because when SDF also came into power, it had changed the government after a long while, which is what happened this time as well. So even their initial sessions were more about telling the people how poorly the previous regime had performed, how they had messed up everything, and now there was a new dispensation in office. So in that sense, it was like of 25-year-old vintage for me. It was more a repeat of what happened at that time, which is expected, I guess. When you change a government after 25 years, you do that. But I think the focus was so completely on putting on record what the present government thinks were the mistakes of the previous one, right? So I'm fine with embarrassing the previous governments for a little bit of time, but devoting the entire 5 days to just that one exercise was, I think, a bit excessive.
So one of the issues which really grabbed the eyeballs of the journalists and of the general people was the the book on the former Chief Minister of Sikkim. Books on the former Chief Minister of Sikkim, which in fact apparently says that almost 7 to 8 crores was spent. How do you say this?
Like I said, it's about embarrassing the previous government. But to play the devil's advocate, right? I think it was excessive, yes. Were too many books published? I don't think, I'll not be the one who will ever say that there are too many books in the market, right? But at the same time, what was the quality of those books? Very shoddy. A lot of the books that IPR has published, I'm not talking just about the books on the Chief Minister, but a lot of books that the IPR has published were very poor compilations. So obviously done just to kind of get something printed. So I think they did not serve the purpose of celebrating what the government was doing. So the quality is poor, yes, but will I say that too many books are ever published? I'll never say that. I don't think there can ever be too many books. The more books you publish, the better. But to play the devil's advocate, I would say that 8 crores in 25 years, do the maths, is that too much? But it works out to how much? 25 years, if you spend 8 crores per year, it works down to, I don't know what, not such a huge amount.
So you think it's not a huge amount?
It's embarrassing, right? When I tell someone that they spent 8 crores to publish books on the CM, everyone will say, oh, that was so megalomaniac, that is so narcissistic and all that, right? But can I have a comparative budget from, let's say, what Bihar has spent on Nitish Kumar? Then if he has not spent anything, then they might be shocked, right? It's all by, so in that sense, I don't think it's such a major issue.
Right.
It's, I mean, like, for me, no. I mean, the more books you publish, I mean, like, spend 20 crores. If 20 crores you had published books worth 20 crores and they were quality books, I would say very well done. They spent 8 crores on very shoddy, most of the books were very quietly poorly done.
So I had a very quick tic-tac with the present Chief Minister as of asking, whom he wants to dedicate, the budget this year. He apparently said to the young people of Sikkim and especially the entrepreneurs. So how do you see, was the budget this year really dedicated to the entrepreneurs or the young people of Sikkim?
The budget is always dedicated to the people. And I think we read too much into a budget of a state like Sikkim, because it's not as if Sikkim has this huge revenue that it will then decide policy. States don't really decide policy. The policy is dictated by Delhi. So when India presents a budget, there's a new vision in it, right? So dedicated to the youth, was there anything standout that is there dedicated to the youth apart from some committees that might have been formed and some scholarships that might have been enhanced? I don't know. And in fact, I was having this discussion with someone else where I said, I understand that when you are forming a government after having replaced a government of 25 years, you will spend a lot of time ridiculing what the previous government did, telling the people that they did a lot of wrong things, telling the people, trying to convince the people that they lied to you. And we know of that whole debt burden, which also I think is overhyped. Every state takes, but I mean, we got to keep one thing in mind. States are not private companies. States don't run for profit. There is no state in India, the government of India doesn't run on profit, right? They're not required to turn a profit. They run on loans and things like that. So I think that for some evening chatter, it's fine to talk about those things. But is there anything that stands out, that this big idea that is there in the budget, I didn't see it. Maybe it's there, I didn't see it. Because when we think about someone who's been waiting in the wings for so long, which means that they've been planning that when I come to government, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. It is not enough for you to say that I'll do this better. Right? The previous government did this. I don't think they did a good job. I'll do this better. That any new government will do, right? But when you're talking about change, a regime change, I want this one big ticket idea. And to give you an example, I'll say, for example, the Kacha House Free mission that the previous government ran, right? CMRHM. Forget about the implementation. As an idea, it was brilliant, right? The organic mission was something that was floated in the budget session, that this is going to be our mission. We are going to go organic. Or 1,000-bedded hospital, which was also, the idea was floated first in the budget and then the state worked towards it. Now, all of these projects, these are big ideas. Right? I remember initially when they were floated, we laughed at it as well. We said, you can never go organic. Well, how is Sikkim going to run a 1,000-bedded hospital? Or how can you possibly make Sikkim Kacha House free? How can the government sponsor the homes and houses for so many people? But these ideas came about, right? We can debate over whether they were done well or not. But these were big ideas that you float in a budget session. What is that big idea in the present budget? I didn't see it. I mean, you can, not a new committee is not an idea, right? Or saying that, talking about media, they used to get, I don't know what, 10,000 positive journalism grant or whatever. You make it 1 lakh. You're enhancing, right? That's a transactional enhancement that you made. But is there this one big target that you've said that we're going to do this? This is our first budget. We decided we're going to do this for the people of Sikkim. That missed me. And I missed that. I find it unfortunate. I don't know, maybe they didn't have enough time. Maybe in the next budget it will come out. It should have come out in the first, I would say.
So what is your point of view on the white paper placed in the House? In fact, this is to
It's
bring
required.
in public domain, like, you know, about the total accounting of the government.
Yes,
So,
it's the liabilities of the government. It's a white paper is required. And if you, whenever there's a government change, it is recommended, and most governments do that. They come out with a white paper, which is like Bahi Khata, no? It's your account books. You're telling the people that this is the account book that I've inherited, and now I'll bill from here. The SDF had also done that in 94, right? SDF, if you go back to 94, you talk to people who covered 94, they'll tell you all of these arguments we've already heard. They said there's a debt burden on Sikkim, policies have failed, there's rampant corruption, there is no delegation of work, and also all these arguments we've heard. So a white paper is it's not, it did not blow me away, as in like there is nothing really scandalous. They're numbers, right? They're liabilities, and we already knew that. They've just put a figure to it, right? Anyone who's got a bill in the government which has not been paid for the last 3-4 years knows that the account sections of government departments, I don't know how they operate, right? They operate in a very casual manner. We always knew that. We knew that there was a liquidity crunch in the government. This puts that on record. It's as an academic exercise, it's very good.
So after the first day of the session was over, I interacted with Bhim Rawat and Anita Nirola on participating of, like, you know, the opposition leaders in the House, which in fact was, like, you know, not there in the first day. And soon thereafter, we saw 2 MLAs, like, you know, in the assembly.
Technically not the opposition, right?
Yes. So how do you see this development? Because, like, you know, I mean, it was pretty interesting in the second day.
It was when the results came out, it was historic, right, in a way, in many ways. You also had a very strong opposition. You had an opposition that was being led by a person who's been the chief minister for 25 years. He understands how the assembly works. He understands how budgets work. You think any of the MLAs understand the budget? I mean, not the budget speech, but the budget documents. Do you think they understand what heads, what is capital expenditure, revenue? They don't, right? It takes anyone a lot of with some financial and economic background to understand these things. But you would have hoped that he had attended the assembly, because then there could have been some really interesting debates, because he could have easily poked holes in things that he thought were just repetitions of previous regimes. Then what's the change that you're talking about? So that was unfortunate. The opposition not attending was unfortunate. As for the two MLAs who showed up, and then I mean, they might still be wearing the SDF colors, but they are obviously like SKM, right, for all practical purposes.
They say themselves SDF too for now.
Yeah, they're SDF too, yes, but we're talking about their performance in the house, right? So it was quite obvious. So their arriving or not arriving makes no difference. At a gossipy level, at a political level, as far as politics is concerned, yes, that's a development, right? That so soon, with the by-elections still not held, two MLAs have jumped ship, whatever be their reasons. And it's not that the people want it. I don't think people sent a petition to these people, please attend the assembly, right? So that is for public consumption. I don't think public consumes that either. So that was interesting at a political level. As far as the performance of the assembly is concerned, it made no difference, because they performed just like all the other SKM MLAs were performing. They asked questions, and it's too early. I understand that also, right? This government has been in office only for 2 months. But did anyone, if you want to talk about the SKM MLAs, all their questions were about, they knew something embarrassing about the previous regime, and they asked questions about that, right? The failures of the 1,000-bedded hospital, there's that, some things that we had not even heard of, some schemes that we had not even heard of. So all of those were asked. Did anyone ask about the bungle with the MR employees, this circular that had come out from the government that MR employees, temporary employees, their contracts will not be renewed anymore?
Yes.
There was no question on that. So there was no, which means that there is no response from the government on record, right? About the OFOJ also, there is the whole thing, okay, it's not been passed by the assembly, we all knew that. But did anyone ask what that entire confusion was about and what the government was doing and what assurances can they make to the people about that? It was not that. It was not there. All of this could have happened if the SDF had decided to attend the assembly. They could have done it under protest, put it on record, written a letter to the speaker saying that we are attending the assembly but we are doing it under protest. That could have been it, but they didn't decide to do that, so they made it really boring. Can you imagine? Otherwise, it would have been 16-15 in the assembly. That could have made for some interesting.
So what do you think, like, you know, these two MLAs, like, you know, coming out against the stand of the SDF, like, you know, not to attend, like, you know, the legislative assembly would affect the by-election, which is around the corner now?
Would affect? These are not people's leaders. I mean, these two MLAs are not the kind who have influence beyond their constituency, right? So if some big SDF leader had gone, maybe the momentum could have been talked about, right? But what it proved to me is that what we said the day of the results, or even before that, we were talking about how SDF's candidate selection was wrong. These two MLAs going to the other side just proves it, that SDF this time really messed up with their candidate selection, right? Those who lost, but even those who won were not clearly picked for their commitment to the party.
So during one of the interviews by one of the MLAs, he pertinently said that I mean, like, you know, attending the assembly is one of the reasons for them, because they just don't want to humiliate the mandate which has been given by the public to them to represent their constituency, right? And second is like the SDF in fact is in the process of, like, you know, I mean, maybe having a collaboration with the National Party. So these were the reasons, like, you know, they gave on record.
Just to play, I mean, I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, right? Because so if it was because they wanted to be true to their constituency, did they ask any question about their constituency? Did any of the MLAs ask what's happening with my road? Or
Yam Prasad raised a few questions on that.
So he's from there. He's from a more remote area. So it's, I mean, it's clearly no one's buying that, right? I don't think anyone like buys their justification for it, and they can just remain silent about it and not keep repeating it. I think that would be the better, because it's like, come on, that's not why they showed up, right? That's
True.
clearly not why they showed up.
Let's come to Aditya Gole. Having covered in assembly for many years, one of the pertinent things which I noticed was even during SDF government, there used to be MLAs who used to ask question in question answer session, but there used not to be any supplement questions. Very few used to. But Aditya this time was very vocal on raising the pertinent issues which in fact deals with his constituency in particular. For example, he also raised issues of the road, transport, and even he placed a suggestion that why not the senior citizen and students be given a very specific discount on the traveling in SNT buses. So how do you see this emerging of a young MLA and being vocal in the state assembly? Because it was apparently we could see he was even questioning the chief minister on different issues.
Yeah. It's too early to be questioning the chief minister because they've just been around for such a short while. It can be more about placing suggestions and demands more vocally. It's always a good sign. I mean, of course, young people in the assembly. So one would hope that there was still some idealism left in them, which more years in politics will of course take away. But it's always a good sign. I mean, not just young, not just youth, any MLA engaging in the assembly, because what people forget is that the assembly is the place where everything is on record, right? It's not something you're saying in a public speech or in a press release or in a press conference. These are things that are on record. You can be held to account for that a year later. So if you say yes, if the transport minister or the chief minister said that yes, we will have senior citizens and students given a discount in SNT bus travel, and it doesn't happen after a year, if not the MLA, we can ask that question. That you said this in the assembly, what have you done about it? So in that sense, the more engaging an assembly session becomes, the better it is. It engages the youth. If the youth engage even more, it's even better, because then they have many more years of politics left in them. So every time they speak in the assembly, they're garnering that much more confidence and experience of the life that they've taken up for themselves. So in that sense, of course, it's a positive sign. Yes, it is.
So how do you see now government functioning? It's been 2 months now, and we know somehow there has been a clipped wings due to many cases in the Supreme Court. How do you see what course the government is
I don't
taking?
think the Supreme Court case clips the powers of the government. It doesn't, because that's about one person. Right, whether he can continue as the chief minister or not. As far as the government is concerned, it can continue functioning, and it's teething problems, and the sooner they get done with the teething problems, the better it will be for them and for Sikkim. I hope they get over this whole tendency of just wasting so much breath on previous governments on what they did wrong, because frankly speaking, I'm not interested, right, in what the previous government did. That's in the past.
Yes.
What is more exciting for Sikkim and for me, how does it matter what interests me? But for the general Sikkimis, what is more exciting and interesting is, what are you planning to do, right? You don't need to convince the Sikkimese people that the SDF government failed, because the people have already taken that decision and given you the office, right? So now what people want to know is, what are you going to do about things? What is your future plan? And your future plan cannot be just claiming that I'll do things better. I'll do the same things better, right? It has to be, I'm going to give you a whole new path to march on. That is what has what was missing in the budget session for me.
So let us talk something which in fact has been a headlines for past few days, and that is Professor Mahendra P Lama being appointed as the chief economic advisor. And recently we know that a senior politician, Bharat Basnet, has categorically condemned and raised an obligation on Mahendra P Lama signing the Masuri resolution,
yeah,
right, on behalf of the chief minister. So many comments in the social media. What is your point of view as a journalist?
It's a government's prerogative. This is not the only appointment that has been questioned. There have been some other appointments that the government did that has also been questioned in this on social media. Social media is really not a yardstick to know the people's pulse. But given that that is the only place where any noise is being made, so what you got to understand about Mahendra P Lama is that he is someone who's been in the public eye for a very long time. He revels in it, also, right? So there will be very strong opinions to him. Why did they pick him? I don't know. Like, I didn't know why the previous government picked him as a chief economic advisor either, right? But they did, and he served them for a very long while, and then he went on to become the vice chancellor of Sikkim University as well. So I have always believed that when it comes to appointments that the government makes, right, in which it has, like, I would have problems if the government, if they were established processes, like how government servants are had, recruited. If the government interferes with that, that is wrong. But there are some things in which the government has the prerogative, right? Maybe the chief minister is comfortable working with Mahendra P Lama, so he picked him. That's clearly the case, right? So when it comes to things in which they have complete prerogative, I think it's up to them. They could have picked someone with no economics background, and who would we be to criticize that, right? So whoever he's comfortable working with. Choice, of course, I can have problems with whether he deserves to be there. That is my personal opinion, right? How does that matter, right? Because, and it's like, the ironies abound in politics. Yeah. Ironies abound. Like, I don't even know what a chief economic advisor does, whether the governments even listen to economic advice, whether a state like Sikkim, which does not really has ever had an economic policy, because you can't, right? You don't have any funds. Your funds depend on Delhi, and Delhi attaches those funds to projects and schemes and things like that. So I don't know how far this requirement for an economic advisor goes.
But we, as far as I know, SKM government has already appointed, like, economic advisor, Mr. Chutim Dendungpa.
He's the chief economic advisor.
Yeah, and chief economic advisor is.
Yeah.
So don't you think at one point SKM government is talking about curtailing and going for the austerity measures, right? So appointing two, advisors like
austerity measures is something else that SDF did in '94. Remember, Chamling refused to use Mercedes, I think Bhandari had. And he traveled in a gypsy.
Right?
Yeah, so even that is not new. So and seriously, you do not see. There's a lot of things that governments do for public consumption. Austerity measures is one of them. No government, at least unless this government proves me wrong, I have not seen any government that is serious about austerity measures. And I don't even believe in that. Why should governments? If the government doesn't spend, who'll spend? In a state like Sikkim, if the government stops spending, how will the economy run? How will homes run here, right? So austerity measures is just for public consumption. I don't think anyone expects the government to actually undertake austerity measures. And not traveling in Fortuners and buying new Scorpios, that's not austerity measures. It cannot, when you're talking a government, then saving 2 crores is not austerity measures. It's got to be much bigger than that. At a policy level, has there been any austerity measure? No, right? For public display, like, that's just for show.
Now, one of the issues which is raking, is of Darjeeling Sikkim merger, which in fact is also
it's a non-issue.
Yeah, it's a non-issue, but even some of the journalists, we are confused on this issue. So how do you although the chief minister has categorically said in many public functions on this, so as a journalist, how do you see this? Because people are correlating this with the appointment of the Mahendra P Lama.
No, I might have other issues with Mahendra P Lama becoming the chief economic advisor, right? But this is not one of them.
Okay.
This is not one of them. I don't think he's the agent for the Darjeeling Sikkim merger. He might be a supporter of the idea. Absolutely fine. You can support the idea of Sikkim Darjeeling merger. At an academic level, there may be many other people who will tell you 10 different reasons why that's such a brilliant idea. But is that an issue? Is that a possibility? I don't think so. It is not a possibility. I don't think anyone takes it seriously. And how complicated is it? Is it just Sikkim saying, yes, I'll take Darjeeling and they'll get Darjeeling? It's not as simple as that. Darjeeling saying, I want to join Sikkim and that will happen? It's not simple as that, right? There's Darjeeling, there's West Bengal involved, there's Sikkim involved, there is Delhi involved. It's, apart from that, is the whole feasibility of the idea itself.
True.
Has anyone at any level argued for a Darjeeling Sikkim merger with any seriousness? It's not. And the demographic changes have taken place. There are 100 different, as it is, Sikkim by itself has so many complications when it comes to local, non-local issues. Can you imagine giving them like 13 lakh more people and saying like, figure out how they're going to become citizens? So that's not an issue. Of course,
but there are parties or groups making historical facts on this.
No, yes, you can. At one time, Sikkim before the merger did consider the idea of asking for Darjeeling back. So, like, that doesn't make it possible, right? I've heard a lot of people make very strong arguments about how it makes sense, how the resources can be better managed and things like that. And you say, it's not as simple as that. Sikkim has a lot of other complications that are there that will not make something like this possible. So, has that found traction with the people? I mean, in a public space, claiming to be a politician, right? I can tomorrow float a political party, no one's stopping me from doing that. And I can make some outlandish announcements. Does that make it plausible? No, it does not make it plausible until it gets traction with the people. Has any party that has promoted the idea of Darjeeling Sikkim merger won any number of votes in an election? Has any political party run with this argument? No, right? So this is, I don't know why it keeps coming up. I can understand the kind of dislike that Darjeeling and Sikkim might have for each other, and political parties can play on that, right? It has been done very well. Every time Sikkim used to have a problem, the previous government would say that the agents from Darjeeling and Kalimpong are trying to instigate, and that worked very well, right? You consolidate the local people on one side, paint a new enemy for them. But beyond that, no. I don't know why people waste their breath with this.
Okay, finally, let us come back to, like, our MP Indrahan. So how do you see, like, I mean, he attended the session, and, like, how do you see him performing, like,
It's too early, really. He's been active, so that's been nice. He's been active. He's been going around meeting people as well, apart from participating in some of the parliamentary debates. This is the first session. Yeah, too early to say what he'll do. And we got to also keep in mind that MPs are not sole performers. At the end of the day, the MP is representing his party in Delhi, right? So when SKM has these big ideas about their idea for Sikkim and things like that, and then he's promoting that in Delhi, that is when I'll kind of say, okay, then now he's doing well. Because that will require strategy, that will require lobbying and coordinating efforts, right? I'm just saying Sikkim University, what happened to its land and what the campus is going. I mean, he's a student from there, so those are definitely expected.
So what do you think, what was the biggest hit of the budget and biggest miss of the budget this year for Sikkim?
I mean, the biggest myth, I don't know about the hits. I mean, the budget got passed. I think that's good enough. We know that they'll be spending now. Some bills might get cleared, so that's good enough. I don't know whether they have the money for it, because we don't know what the Niti Aayog has given to Sikkim and things like that. That doesn't happen anymore. So the misses would be this. I mean, for me, the budget session, I was looking forward to the budget session wondering what would be this one big idea that SKM will float, right? That this is going to be our focus for the next 1 year or the next 5 years or the next 10 years or whatever. I didn't see that. That's a big miss, I think. Because they could have given anything. This is the honeymoon period, right, for a new government. They could have done anything. I mean, they could have said that they could have actually said that we're going to remove all temporary workers, and there would have been no backlash. That is the benefit of the honeymoon period for a government. Because really, when the circular came out, that there will be no renewals of contracts. Was there any backlash? I mean, even SDF took about 3 days to react to that news. So they could have come up with some really big concepts, direction, ideas. I didn't see that. That was unfortunate.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, sir, for being with us and sharing your opinion on this. Thank you so much. With camera person Ashish, this is Nirmal for Sikkim Chronicle.